everyone. Welcome to Radical Geek tonight. I'm hoping that this is working. It's acting a little weird. I'm going to click this button here. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Radical Geek. Just double checking that I actually went live. I had to push an extra button tonight. And goodness, look at the chat. There are so many of you here. Let's see. We've got JV Dub, Becca. Hi, Becca. And no worries, we will make sure you learn how to use your French press. We've got Air Fry and Auntie, and the Warden, Caboodle Bry, Jen, Christina. Wow, goodness, and you guys are chatting away. I cannot get all of this. Let's see. Oh, and yes, lots of hellos. And so I'm going to dive right in then, because this the French press takes a little bit longer for this particular brew. I see Rhonda on the line. No worries, Rhonda will be here, so no worries. So what I've got here tonight is the French press, and it comes with a chamber, and then it has a metal filter and a lid for brewing, and that is really all of the parts. It sounds incredibly simple for something that comes across as very fancy, but it's not. And basically you'll be able to wash everything right out in the sink with a little water and soap, no worries. Everything is permanent. There's no filters to throw away or anything like that. And then I see Hungry Heath is making jokes at my expense, but you know, there's always revenge. So let me talk about the French press a little bit and what we're going to do tonight. I jokingly titled this to plunge or not to plunge, and that is because amongst people who drink coffee, they talk about this back and forth all the time. And tonight, we are not going to plunge. Because tonight what we're going to do is what I call the James Hoffman's new wave ultimate French press brew method. And I think actually it might have come up in our Two Crazy Ketos group as a topic of discussion, because I found someone else on there who also knew who James Hoffman was. If you're wondering why we give a crap about why James Hoffman likes a special brew, well, he's the 2007 World Coffee Champion. Yes, there's a World Coffee Champion. Someone who is talked about constantly in the coffee world, and someone who has made a coffee in front of 16,000 people and then had a panel of experts analyze that coffee and tell it and say, you're number one. You kind of think he probably knows what he's talking about. Now, I actually am lazy, and usually I just do your old standard brew, but I thought let's make it special for Sunday night. And we can do a standard brew in a future stream. It's not as if we're going to run out of Sundays. So, the number one thing you need is coffee. I'm going to stick that here for a second. And I have chosen I just ground it like right before I clicked the buttons to go live. So it had that amazing smell. Anyways, but you want actually a medium grind, leaning closer to coarse. So like normally we've been doing 3 and 2. Here you want to lean on that 4 or 5. I don't know if I would go as big as 6, but you could, and it wouldn't be terrible coffee. The important thing with French press is that because it's super easy to over extract or scorch it with the water, because a lot of times people think you should bring it to boiling water, and actually it's about 195 degrees and not boiling. If it's boiling, you're going to definitely over extract it, and you're going to have yourself that tart bitter coffee. So you also use like a 1:15 ratio. And my pot here is a 15-ounce pot. So, you know, I'm going to use like 28 to 30 grams of coffee. A 1 to 15 ratio means you would be using 15 grams of coffee to every 225 grams of water. Now, what we're going to do is also, you should know, very important with French press, and actually with a lot of coffees, is you have to weigh. So I've got my handy dandy scale here. It's a little digital scale. Zero it out, and let's scoop in the coffee. I don't know if you can actually see the texture up close. Yeah, you can see it's a little chunkier than your canned coffee, but not much. And really, probably some canned coffees are right there. So you'll dump that in. Get it good and piled. Just a teeny bit more. There we go. After that, I'll take this ground coffee up and I'll use it in my drip pot for the morning. So anyway, so the next thing, now the one difference that I'm going to say that I would do different than James Hoffmann, and this is because it is my personal preference, by no means do you have to do this. I like to bloom my coffee. I don't care, it's my preference, and that's the way I like it. And by blooming the coffee, it means I have given this a shake, leveled out the grounds. I've zeroed out the scale, lost my phrasing there. And now I'm going to pour coffee in, and I'm just going to bring it up and cover these grounds, and I'm going to wait a second. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to stir it. I'm just going to wait for a minute. And let's see where we are in the comments while I do that. Let's see. Oh, hey, Gigi's here. Purple Lady Texas is here. Kathy in Arizona's here. Let's see. Oh, Air Fried Aunties likes my green screen effect. Yeah, I thought we were in France, and because I love the bicycle, I thought the tour would be hilarious to put up there. So let's see. Jay's making a potty joke, and that's hilarious. So, yeah, Heath is. You know what? We're winning Heath over a little bit at a time. So, yeah. And so I can smell it. And now I'm going to just finish pouring it off. I'm at 98 grams of water. And I'm going to bring it all the way up here. And there we are. That is the end. And I have measured. And now, here's the hard part. We just let it sit here for a few minutes. Actually, 4 minutes is the recommended time. So I'm going to let that sit. And it seems like a long time because after that, we're going to do a couple things. And then it has to sit some more. Let's see where we are in the comments. Let's see. Oh, Becca's been saying she's been trying to cut down on how much coffee you drink. And, you know, that's not a terrible thing because, like all things, if you go too crazy and you have too much, there can be some negative effects. There are actually a lot of really positive medical studies about coffee and the impacts it can have on your system. But if you take anything too far, of course, it can have a negative effect. So if you're experiencing things like some bathroom issues or a tick in your lip or your eye, it's time to cut back on the caffeine. So while this waits, let's see. I've bloomed it. I've let it sit. I don't know if I can get not really, because I can't really tilt it to show you. But what happens is a large chunk of the grounds are down here at the bottom, and then a whole bunch has kind of floated up here to the top, and you get like a frothy little crema and a pile of grounds. And that is why we have to wait for a few minutes, and that's crucial for the next step, for which I'm going to bring this little discard bowl and my 2 spoons, which we'll show you about in a minute. Have a sip of my icy water. So, and in case I didn't say it, the French press is considered a full immersion brewer. That's why the coffee goes at the ground and goes to the bottom, and you pour the water on top and it stays underneath, except for these bits that I told you come up on top. So, why this James Hoffmann method? And the reason this happens is because he discovered this because of the controversy between Plunge and no Plunge. And no Plunge people, what they would do is they would have immediately put this on and put it right here at the top and just barely broken through the surface, let it brew for a couple minutes, and then without plunging, they'll pour it off into the cup. And they said it's less silty or less grounds. Traditional French press, you would have put this in, waited for it to brew, and pushed down all the way to the bottom. And it is true that you do get grounds and silt in your coffee. For me, I actually don't mind that. I enjoy that, but I think that's because I come from someone who has drank a lot of Turkish coffees and other pour-over things and boil in the pot coffees where that kind of stuff happens. So it's all, again, personal preference. But with the J. Hoffmann method, we're taking care of some of it, and some of that silty and stuff is cleared out, and it's a bit more effective than just not plunging. So let's see. Let me check in here. Let's see. Oh, and Christina Vickers is asking if it gets cold just sitting so long. Honestly, it's only going to be a total of 8 minutes. 195 degrees is not that far off from boiling. So if you only waited a couple minutes, which is semi-traditional, it's so hot when you first put it in your cup you can't drink it anyways. By the time you're done with this, it becomes a fairly comfortable drinking temperature, as well as being quite tasty. And that's the key. That's what we're waiting for. Let's see. And CAWFEE and JV Dub are talking about how about their wonderful Arizona winter weather, which of course is amazing, and not like here where we are in very cold. It is cold and windy. I see Visual Keto has joined us. Let's see. Oh, Hungry Heath is pulling brisket off the Traeger. I wish I was having brisket tonight. So, but I also had a lot of really fun things to eat today. And speaking of fun things to eat today, I will tell you that we're going to actually do the next step in this before I tell you that. So the next thing to do is I'm going to take one of my 2 spoons and I'm just going to barely break this crust here that's at the top. You don't want to get deep in there because you don't want to stir up the grounds at the bottom, but I gave it a little bit of a stir, and you can sort of see on the camera if I bring it, no, I guess not, a little closer, but you could sort of see through that it got like that crema really developed on the top. And that's awesome. That's exactly what you want to see. Then you take your 2 spoons together and you kind of give a little scoop through here, and you're picking off some of those, a little bit of the crust and the fines that are left on the top. It's hardly anything. I almost wonder if you really have to do it, but I find that it's so good. Yeah, that is all I pulled out of there, so not much at all. These become your discard spoons, and now you put your filter in and you bring it just to the top of that crust like we were talking. I'm looking for my little pour spout. This one has a little sieve, so there we go, and we just bring it right down here. And we just stick it through the top of the crema. And there we go. Now the hard part. We've got to wait another few minutes before we can have our coffee. So, good things come to those who wait. As always, with your coffee, you should have some water. It's good for the palate, plus it keeps you hydrated. So back to my treat for the night. As many of you know, I've been experimenting with that egg bread, and this will be a good time to show you. What I did was I was trying to reproduce the angel food cake, but I made it in a loaf shape. Perhaps not. So anyways, it's a good bready texture. It's sort of like it came out this time sort of like a cross between angel food cake and pound cake. So I went ahead and I made myself a little frosting for it using cream cheese and heavy cream. So, but the reason it came out this way is after the fact I forgot. I forgot, and while I was making it, I was forgetting that I was making cake, and so I put my nutritional yeast in there, and that's the only ingredient that was different from the angel food cake. So I'm convinced that that's what made it come out pound cakey. So, but it tastes real good. It just did a weird thing where it split on the top side, which I've seen that happen to some people. So I'm not upset about it in any way, shape, or form. It's firmer. It's not as light as angel food, but it's not quite as heavy as pound cake, but that flavor is there. So I'm super pleased. Let's see here in the comments. Oh, Kathy says she drinks 1 big cup a day, but doesn't overdo it. I can't say the same thing. I do drink probably 3 shots of espresso plus a 20 ounces of coffee in a day. A couple days more, many days not quite that much, so 50-50. If I have a Turkish coffee, it definitely way less. I just lose the desire for it. Purple Lady in Texas is asking how do you know fine or coarseness if using a regular grinder. Purple Lady, that's going to tell me a couple things. Do you have a Burr grinder or a blade grinder? A blade grinder would be the kind that looks like the herb grinder, is just the electric, or maybe like a blender grinder, or even if you're using like a bullet blender, those would be blade grinders. And a Burr grinder is the device that has the specific, blades that go, and they actually are adjustable. They're usually machine or hand crank sorts. Let's see. And Becca has asked if I posted the angel food cake recipe, and that's a solid not yet because I'm still working on it. It's not quite right. I have too many. I've only made it 3 times yet. Now the family and myself all devour it. It is quite good, but it hasn't been the same any of the times. So I want to make sure that I can get something consistent before I tell people it's a good food to have. And let's see. I was excited. I was like, oh, it's time for the coffee, but not quite yet. I still got another minute. So we'll do that. Yeah, so Purple Lady, if you have a blade grinder, it's going to be really hard to tell when your grinds are just right because the blade grinder is uneven, so you're going to get a mixture of grind. Your best bet is to go ahead and do brews that aren't overly picky. So French press will work just fine. What you'll want to do is go ahead and take a look in a can of grocery store coffee and see how it's kind of a little bit bigger than sugar, and aim for that. And so you'll have some pieces that are a little chunkier and some pieces that are a little smaller. They'll be fine, especially with this method. You may find that when you're doing the scoop off the top that you're scooping out way more than I did. But your coffee will still taste great. So, and I am ready. So I'm just going to slowly pour. You see it always starts off looking light, and then as you pour it develops and gets that rich looking aspect to it as it hits the air. Sort of like decanting almost. You guys, this is supposed to be like 8 cups of coffee, but I don't know anyone who drinks 4-ounce cups of coffee, and I don't know why that's an industry standard. It's like craziness, right? So, periodically you do have to let it go over to the side, but I'm just going to leave it. Now, the other thing I would tell you is I'm going to leave this just as is. I'm not going to worry about it. I might run it through a mesh filter or something later and keep the over extracted stuff and use it in a coffee gelatin or something where it doesn't matter that it's gone awry. I'll leave that here so it's still in the screen. But for the most part, I'm going to top it off. I'm indecisive tonight, you guys. Okay, anyways. It's slow trickle. But there we go. So you can't really see because of how dark it is, but the golden part of this method is there are no grinds. Part of the extra long weight, and with the scooping out and then waiting again with the plunger at the top, the very fine silts that they call fines actually float down to the bottom. So that is why it's such a nice, beautiful, clear cup of coffee. And well, I guess you can't really see the steam on there. I was going to show you how it was still hot because the steam wafted up. But the lighting and the stuff, it can only do so much. Oh yeah. Coffee champion of the world. You know it. He gave me a good cup. So, but as Kathy P mentions that getting a Burr grinder is worth the investment, it is. Now, I'll tell you, coffee pros, like the one I was just talking about, will tell you that your cheap Burr grinder is not even worth it, and don't even bother. But I will tell you, it is so worth it. It is. The fresh grind, it's still relatively controllable. It's not as good as your $400 grinder, but you know what? I can spend money fairly easy and not feel hurt, but I cannot spend $300 to $400 on a coffee grinder. I just can't, no matter how much I love it. Maybe one day it will go on a good Black Friday sale and I'll be able to pick one up, but no. So I have the trash Cuisinart Burr grinder, and guess what? I love it, and I'll tell other people to buy it. It's great. It smells good. My coffee tastes great. I don't have any problem with the consistency of the grinds. It is glorious, and I adore it. One more time. Brew ratio 1 to 15. So 15 grams coffee to 225 grams water. So let's see. Oh yeah, Purple Lady Texas says the regular cup is 12 ounces. Yep, this is a 12 ounce cup. This is the Bodum double walled glass, and I don't know. I really love them. I enjoy my saucy, sassy cups too, which I use a lot of times during the course of my work day because it makes me feel good to look at coffee cups with swear words. But I pour from my thermos into it in small amounts, so it doesn't need the double insulation. Airfry and Auntie is also discovering that Burr grinders are expensive. Yes, absolutely. And yes, they can be big. That's why I was satisfied with the little hand grinder. And it's also why I don't complain or feel that I'm getting something inferior or unworthy with the $80 version that I have from Cuisinart, which sometimes goes on sale for $50. Like I said, coffee pros will tell you to throw it in the trash. I'm going to tell you, I don't have the luxury of $300 coffee grinders, and so my $50 Cuisinart is a-okay for me. So let's see. Airfry and Auntie complaining because I'm making us do math for coffee. I'm going to take a bite of this. My portion was able to be really big for the macros that I allowed for tonight. So I feel like I should have made like that anime sort of sound when I bit into it, but I couldn't quite do it. Oh, take a minute to chew. So, let's talk about the next part. I always tell you guys history. So, other names for the French press. I always get the word wrong, so let's hope I can say it right at least once. And Airfry and Auntie, yes, I will post the Cuisinart grinder I have. Probably in the comment section of this video. I'll try and get to it tomorrow. So, but if I don't, if some of you would give me a stab and remind me, that would be super fantastic. So, and Christy McMullen, you're asking why we didn't plunge. We'll do a plunge brew in the future as well, but tonight we didn't plunge because we're trying out James Hoffman's Ultimate French Press No Silt No Grind French Press brew, and so that was tonight. And true to his word, I have 0 grinds or silt in my cup of coffee, so I'm not mad about it. It also tastes really good. It might be giving a run to my beloved AeroPress, although not quite. Oh, coffee math, like 6 cups on the coffee pot. Yes, coffee math is ridiculous. I don't know who decided that. It's just terrible. So, but Christy McMullen, the reason we don't plunge is we were trying this method, and the theory is not only does it give you a cleaner cup of coffee, also it's easier with the longer brew, but gets a more even extraction without accidentally squeezing out the bitters. And it also, well, I said this earlier, the brew allows the oils from the coffee bean to further develop into the actual brew. So those are a couple fun parts about that. So, okay, other names for the French press. The cafetiere, that's the one I always have trouble saying. Or the plunger brewer. The other name that it has is called the chambord, and that'll be important here in a couple minutes. Oh, let's see, and Kathy mentions that she has the Capresso grinder. It was $100 and highly recommended for us coffee intermediates. Sounds perfect. I have no problem with Capressos. I've had good stuff from that company. So yeah. And like I said, I'm never unhappy with the coffee I grind in my Cuisinart. So, yep. Oh yeah. So the cafetiere or the plunger. So French press. The first design of the French press was by Meyer and Delforge. But they didn't have like the interior filter. It didn't have a seal. Like this has that seal on the inside. It didn't have that. So they say they're the first designers of the French press, but it truly wasn't the French press we know today. Now, in 1929, there was the first patent of a French press similar to what we have today. And that was by Calamiani. I know I said his name wrong. Attilio Calaminati and Julio Moneta. His name, I just butchered it. I got Julio right because that's fine, but Attilio Calamani, there it is. Okay. Anyways, in 1929, these two Italian gentlemen were able to patent the French press design. And then it wasn't again until 1958 when Faliero Bondanini, yeah, I can't say the other names, but I guess some wacky name that I can say no problem, patented the chambord, which was a French press marketed as Le Cafetiere Classique. Now, here's the twist. He's Swiss. So, it was the Swiss who perfected the French press and gave it its fancy French name. So, and they marketed Le Cafetiere in the UK. Let's see. And Airfryer Andy is asking if French presses are usually glass, and the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. And I do have a metal one, and I didn't bring it out tonight. We'll use it some night during a brew. And I know during the first coffee talk we had, I did show both French presses that I have. But now some of them are metal, and they have stainless steel, they have aluminum, they have all kinds. And I like glass, but I don't have a real reason for it other than I like looking at the liquids in the containers. I love watching stuff as their magic works. So you will hear some people who complain about using the metal ones and say that it gives the coffee a metallic taste, or you know, the 1-2 weighers who will tell you, oh no, you can't brew in stainless steel, it's going to get too hot and over extract. And I'll be honest, in a side-by-side brew, if I had to do a blind test, I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference. And I am pretty particular. Am I an expert? No. But am I pretty picky? Yes. So, but I do like the visual of the glass and being able to see inside and see my grounds and all of that fun stuff. So, there you go. So, anyways, let's see. Oh, and Older Pennsylvania's joined us and says that this is the same one that their aunt got them for Christmas. Yeah, it's a fun little one. I really like it. Plus, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I dig copper. So, it really floated my boat to get the little copper one. It's a Byka brand, Bayka. And honestly, it's not even a major coffee name or anything like that, but it was cute. It was just the perfect size for me, and so I ran with it. So after the Swiss started marketing the Chambord in the UK, some Denmark company came in and bought the rights to the name Chambord. However, they left the trademark with the original people. This company is Bodum, the manufacturers of my fancy cup. So they're out of Denmark. They began distributing the Chambord. They marketed heavily. They became like super popular all over Denmark and then all about. And Becca says this is prettier than hers, but I'll tell you, that's probably why I bought it, because it was super fun and super cool to look at. Attractive was a matter, but it will also tell you that the filter works really well. Even when I do Plunge, just your standard quick and easy French press, I don't really get a lot of problems with it, so it's good for me. So, as you might expect, after Bodum bought the copyright to the Chambord and started marketing it like crazy and making it super popular and wildly successful, now they're in a very bitter legal battle over it. There's a lot of disputes over whether Bodum actually should control the patent or the designs, or if not owning the trademark means they don't own it, and if just owning the name Chambord is enough for them to be marketing the French press. Wow. So, Older Pennsylvanian says they have an actual Bodum. So, yeah, they're all very attractive. They're all really good. There's some different designs, and we'll show more in the future. We have lots of lives to go through where we can show this kind of thing. So, that's the main crux of the story for the French press. And I knew it wasn't that long, and it's only 7 o'clock, so we covered the whole kit and caboodle in half an hour, 40 minutes, including having my brew. But that's okay, but wait, there's more. I wanted to first grab some things here. There's so much I'm going to tell you tonight for no reason other than I like chatting with you. And so, I posted these on the Two Crazy Ketos group, but not to my audience at large, although I think almost all of you are part of the Two Crazy Ketos as well. So, this year I participated in the Elfter gift exchange for the Two Crazy Ketos, and Phyllis was my awesome Elfster who sent me actually not one but two gifts. So they gave me these resistance bands, which I will be using next time around that Body Fit by Amy or Emily do the mini band intense workouts. So that's pretty cool. Oh, older Pennsylvanians asking me to repeat the ground I use. It's a coarser grind, so you want more than the number 3 medium that we've been using, and somewhere between 4 and 5 is what the grind is. It's chunky, a little bit chunkier than what you get out of the a pre-ground in the can from the grocery, but not really a lot. Let me see if I can show you guys again. Yeah, so oh man, opening it still just smells so amazing. Because of course now it's only been ground half an hour. I just love that. If you're a coffee lover, I think you know exactly what I mean when I'm talking about that fresh smell that comes right when you take the, right when you grind it. The same smell comes back up when you pull off your little container lid. I'm super looking forward to my morning coffee with that. So anyway, so she got me these resistance bands, and I thought that was more than enough. In fact, I feel like she might have gone overboard, but I double checked and really seems all in line. But so I got the full set of resistance bands, and then crinkle crinkle, I got another box that had this awesome gift wrap with another gift in it. So if you guys didn't get the gift wrap on Amazon, it's one of the options they offer when you're sending gifts. This year, it's this nice mesh pouch. Super nice. So definitely reusable for tons and tons of things. I know it's weird to be excited by the gift wrap, but I was super jazzed with it. But what she actually sent me were these silicone molds, and it was a 2-pack of these little bread molds. I was so stoked for them because I think they are absolutely perfect for the egg breads that we've been experimenting with. It's really sturdy. It has you can see here on the sides, it's got little feet, and the other silicone pans I have get really floppy, so if you put anything with any sort of strength, it kind of like bows out under the weight of any light little batter. And these are super sturdy and heavy duty. They hold up to everything. So I just wanted to share that. That was like a pretty awesome thing. And even though I took a couple chomps out of it, that is the pan I used for my little cake loaf. So you can see it comes up with a really nice little slice. A little crumb. So that's the one thing. Let's see where we are. Sure thing, older Pennsylvania. Like I said, moderately coarse, a little bit more than your standard grocery grind. So Air Frying Andy says they love to send a gift wrap, and may order something for herself to gift wrap it. That's not a bad plan, actually. So, but yeah, I agree. It's about a half batch each, so perfect because they come in a 2-pack. So that was the Elfster thing, and I'm just like absolutely stoked. It was so awesome. Take a moment here. Then I'm gonna also take this moment to take a chomp off my cake. And since it's a live stream, I'll talk to you while I'm chewing and use bad manners. I thought I would have fun and share geek topics with you. I know I'm not the only one here who likes superhero stuff. And while most of the time I'm in the Marvel camp, there's a lot of jokes, like DC and Marvel fans they shall meet, but there actually is a lot of crossover between them. But my very, 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 very favorite, regardless of everything else, is Harley Quinn. And you might think that's weird, and it maybe is, but I'm obviously not the only one because she's wildly popular. But I thought I would do a couple different things and show you how I'm meshing my geekness this year. I belong to a cosplay guild, and this year we have decided that we are going to do Mandalorian mashups for OhioCon happening in January. And before I come back to it, I'm going to answer a question from the chat. OP is asking how I made the cake, and the cake is a mistake, but also delicious. I was making the egg bread, but instead of but I got lost part ways through. Even though I added the allulose to it, I also mistakenly added the nutritional yeast flakes, and it came out with, instead of just being angel food, a little bit more bread-like in texture. And so as it turns out, it's kind of like a cross hybrid between pound cake and angel food. So just for that, I have to take another bite. It's really good. Sorry to give you silence, but I'm sure that we can chat in the chat and amuse ourselves while I take a moment for a bite or a sip. Anyways, our cosplay guild are doing Mandalorian mashups. A mashup, when it comes to cosplay, is taking parts from two different areas and merging them together to create something recognizable but also new, and kind of gives you that weird And our group is doing a wide variety of Mandalorians, so it's going to be super cool. We have someone who's doing a steampunkalorian. We have someone doing oh geez, I can't even think of all of the different ones. Many different ones. There's like I said, the steampunk, and the funniest one, we have someone doing a man-DeLorean. Get it? MAN-DELOREAN. And yes, we are building him a light-up flux capacitor. So that will be amazing. And OhioCon has kind of a younger audience, so I don't know if they're going to necessarily get the joke, but all of the parents there will, that's for sure. And of course, we will be amused. And I am just so looking forward to it. But I thought I would share with you. I know you won't necessarily be able to see lots of it. I've got an undersuit for underneath my armor, and it does have the Harley Quinn designs, and it's a grungier design, so it's got like a distress to it, which I thought would be good for underneath the Mandalorian because only parts of it are going to show through. So only parts of it will show through because I'm going to totally ruin it by putting my armor on there. So I am doing, in case you haven't guessed, the Harley Lorian. And we've started doing the armor printing. So I've got my Mandalorian helmet. And right now, I'm trying hard to decide whether I am going to drill holes into it and get Harley Quinn pigtails, or if I'm just going to leave it and so rudely occasionally take my helmet off for the whole 9 yards with the pigtails and the makeup and everything. Hard to say, but by the time it's done, this will be painted. This is all printed. It hasn't been sanded or anything yet. It's a hard thing, and boy, we're starting to get down to the wire because OhioCon is in February. Again, I'm a little bit worried because of my lack of progress, but we always manage to pull it off. And Air Fry and Auntie says is voting for pigtails, and Hungry Heath, I can't do pics until it actually happens, which will be February. And as you can see, it is happening. It's a work in progress. So we've got the helmet, and the rest of the parts won't look like much yet. So, but I can show you how it's coming along. We've got the chest armor. that will be painted to go and attach right on. So that's kind of awesome. And these are all 3D printed. So, and I've got my gauntlets. So, gauntlet armor. The stomach plate. So, you know, fully armored. Oh, let's see. I'll show you. These are the knees, which are, you know, you can't really tell a whole lot. It'll be more impressive when they're actually on my knee, but I'm not getting my knee in camera view in any sort of easy way. I've got shoulders. You can sort of see the pattern here on this, the Mandalorian pattern. So, you know, that'll be my shoulders. And then, not even broken all the way apart from the print yet, I've got the thigh and shin armor pieces. So I say there's a lot to do, but there's also a lot that's kind of done. Now the next step is going to be that I've got to get everything sanded and painted. And then I have to affix it to the outfit. So that, and also I have to still make a cape. I almost forgot about that because we didn't do the back of armor. We really thought about it, but man, so not only does this take hours and hours and hours and hours and days of printing, and we've got like 10 of us all going together in these Mandalorian outfits, we all decided universally that instead of doing our back armor, we would cheat and we would be doing capes, because Mandalorians have capes. Also, a piece of work I'll be able to show you when it's in, as it progresses, is going to be my mallet, because I know Mandalorians don't carry mallets, but Harley Quinn does, and so I am making a ginormous, oversized mallet, and it's so exciting. I'm going to look forward to sharing that with you. Let's see. Yes, more votes for pigtails. So the only thing is that I'm not sure how easy it'll be to drill holes in there. I'm going to talk to someone else who's worked with it. But also another vote for pigtails. Lots of votes for pigtails. I kind of think it would be funny, although not very Mandalorian. But definitely very Harley. So I'm still waiting. I'm going to have to double check and make sure that I'm not going to totally destroy the helmet by putting the pigtails in. I still have to add some padding in there so it doesn't hurt my head. So that's the cosplay piece. The next thing that I still have pieces that I got to break off these. It's got to all be sanded. I haven't decided how I'm going to attach it to the union suit, because the other thing that I have to figure out is a cosplay issue all around, and that is it's a union suit, so it zippers up in the back. You know, we're at a convention and I'm going to be out running around for a whole day in this. At some point I gotta go to the bathroom, and I don't know how I'm going to do that with the armor. So I think that I have seen some methods where they're using a snap method, where they affix snaps to the back and then have stitch snaps onto the union suit. But the union suit is really super stretchy, so I'm not sure if that's going to work. But I do have to go to the bathroom, as you know, because I'm keto and I drink a lot of fluids. So that might be the challenge, and that's probably the next thing of the design I have to work out. And Shauna mentions maybe we could affix pigtails to the outside and then also wear them on my head, so if I take my helmet, they're still pigtails. That's kind of a genius that I'm going to seriously consider. So, let's see. Another sip. You guys, this cup of coffee is getting better as it sits. That's really interesting. It doesn't always do that. It does that sometimes, but often it just gets cold. In this case, because of the insulated cup and having been really warm inside the press, is really getting nice. I am a happy camper. So, Yeah, someone I saw that Air Fry Auntie also said they were MCU camps. So those are some of my favorites. But yeah, yeah, the Mandalorian Quinn. Oh, that's a nice way of putting it too. I might have to think about that. I can't wait to share with you guys the design once it's all painted up. I think that you'll really like it because I've got it kind of sketched out in my head and not so much onto the paper. But that is why I was thinking that I needed to find someone local to me who would totally frenzy do some cry cut for me, because I'm undecided if painting will be hard to pull off with the stencils, or if I would be better off getting the stencils printed out with the cry cut and then just adhesing them on. 50-50. There's going to be paint anyways, because obviously they can't just look like this. So, but if you're not familiar with Harley Quinn and Air Fry Auntie, yes, you can absolutely cosplay vicariously through us. We love it. So, and part of the build is part of the joy of that. But that's why I decided that since we had plenty of time, I know that you can cut vinyl and ship it to me, but also cosplayers also like to do things where they pitch in and help out. And I have some friends who are in a lot of other cosplaying guilds, or even some who might be in our guild who can probably do it local. And that way we're not spending your money unnecessarily. And also that's what we do, as we pitch in and help each other out. So the part of the reason you belong to a guild is so everybody can pitch in and do things together. So if I get stuck in a jam, 100% I'll be reaching out and be like, help, it's the last minute. And then I'll have to PayPal you like emergency funds. So I can do one of two things. I can geekify a bunch of Harley Quinn, although now we wouldn't have enough time to do a full deep dive. I can give you the high levels for Harley Quinn, but I also can just tell you from a personal standpoint why I like Harley Quinn, and then we can start doing just a little bit of that dive in, and always bring it in to the next round when I show you an update on the progress of our cosplays. So I will tell you that one of the reasons I like Harley Quinn is she's really very symbolic, and it's something that people don't think about in terms of comics, or because they think of them as lighthearted or stupid things kids are into, but comics start dealing with some very serious topics and give a different way to view them, and sometimes a way for people to resonate with them. And Harley Quinn is 100% a brilliant woman who puts herself in a position where she endures horrendous abuse, and for years and years and years, and even with her healthier choices in her future part, still is back in that abuse cycle that she cannot seem to escape, no matter what she does. And in some instances she puts herself in it, and in other times it's through nothing that she can get out of. And so in that way she really speaks to a large swath of women, because a lot of women can relate to that, or really any abused person can really relate to that. In a lot of her comics, she really brings out the emotion. For an example, in the Harley Quinn comic books, Harley Quinn has a on-again, off-again friendship going with Black Canary, back and forth, and many different times when they're enemies, times when they're frenemies, times when they're not on good terms at all. So in one of the times when they are fighting in an alley, Black Canary becomes ill, which stops the fight because Harley Quinn, although sometimes villain, is actually an anti-hero. We'll talk about anti-heroes in general in a second. And if I am scaring you off with nerd chat, just let me know and we can change the subject and go back and talk about other things. But it really is my favorite. So, but Harley Quinn and Black Canary stop fighting because Black Canary is ill. And Harley Quinn basically verbally pulls out of Black Canary that she is pregnant. And Harley Quinn tells her, you need to knock off this hero bullshit then because you're pregnant. And that is when they bring into the storyline that Harley Quinn and Joker produced a child. And it's the first time that, while it's been acknowledged throughout the comics, it's the first time that Harley Quinn herself acknowledges how horrendous things are with the Joker, because she explains that when she found out that she was pregnant, she actually left. And she talks about how, in fact, I left for an entire year and he didn't even notice. And then she kind of gives that nervously, laughs it off, like, isn't that funny? A whole year and he didn't even notice I was gone. But that's also where she shares with Black Canary that she had this baby and she knew she was going to come back to the Joker though, and the Joker would not want a child. And so she gave the baby away. And that's where she shares that she says it was the right thing to do because now Lucy, what she named the baby, is going to have a good life with real parents and not be exposed to all of this mess that is my life. And not be killed by her own father. Those are some pretty big, heavy-duty things, you know, to just lay out there in a comic strip. So, and at that point in time, Harley Quinn speaks for so many women and to so many women. Especially because you realize that as she says that, I gave up my baby and then I came back. So, it's pretty obvious throughout the lifespan of Harley Quinn in the comic verse that she has the worst case of Stockholm Syndrome ever. I need more cake. You all have gone really super quiet in the chat. Too heavy or too weird? You tell me. But thanks, because the warden says they love nerd chat. Like I said, I didn't pick the name Radical Geek for nothing. It's I love deep diving into stuff. And so when I like things, I always deep dive and learn all about it. But Love of Comics actually goes way back into my childhood, so I've been reading them for a long time. Now, the other thing is that Harley Quinn is not necessarily as popular as some of the other long enduring characters, but she keeps growing in popularity, and part of that is the natural evolution, because Harley Quinn is also a character that hasn't been around as long as many of them. So I see Caboodle Bry says they are loving it, and Visual Keto loves the character, so that's good. I'm glad that you like hearing it. I just want to make sure that it's all groovy. I'm so used to us being so chatty that just listening is different for me. So an older Pennsylvanian says they don't really know anything about it. Oh, I will get you there. It may take us a while. And not all tonight, of course. But we'll at least teach you about the awesomeness of Harley Quinn. So Harley Quinn was a new character introduced to the DC Universe in 1992. And most characters in comics, whether it's Marvel or DC or any of the other universes, usually are in the comic and then are brought into random TV series. This was the other way around. So Harley Quinn doing it weird right from the start. Harley Quinn started out in TV, in Batman the Animated Series in the early 90s. So And she was a genius idea by Paul Dini. And I say genius because it evolved that way, but honestly, it was a terrible idea at first. Just horrible. So, and Harley Quinn was meant to be a throwaway character to just randomly toss into the cartoon for a couple episodes with the Joker. And Visual Keto weighing out protein powder. Man, we gotta weigh everything. Sometimes it's a struggle because I just want to be a little bit lazy. And I admit, while my keto chows are better when I weigh, there are definitely times when I just do the scoop and I smash it all full and then like squish it up against the side of the container and dump it in there and I'm done with it. So, before I get too further in then, since I know there are people here who don't know about comics, I will tell you Harley Quinn is an anti-hero, and anti-heroes are not villains. Nor are they heroes. They're anti-heroes because a lot of the things they do are really wrong. However, they have some kind of a moral compass that makes them do the right thing in the right circumstances. Throughout the course of her history, yes, Harley Quinn has killed people. However, when she kills people, part of it was when she was with the Joker and she didn't really feel she had a choice about it. A questionable thing there, but when push comes to shove, especially these days, Harley Quinn is really towing that line of hero, not hero. But I like to refer to them in like gaming terms and say they are the chaotic neutral of the comic world. Because basically anti-heroes do what they have to do to get things done, regardless of what those things are, without worrying about the repercussions. So if in order to save the kid they have to rob jewels from the bank to pay someone off, despite the fact that robbing jewels is wrong, they will rob the jewels and probably kill a couple guards in the process, but they will save the child. Yeah. Another good example of anti-heroes would be the Punisher, a war hero who endured horrendous crime, who is now on a ban to exact revenge by killing people, but he only kills people who have done a tremendous wrongs. So, good person, the Punisher will never do a thing to you other than help you. Bad person, he'll kill you. Venom, anti-hero. Venom seems real bad because he eats people, and often, especially in the current movies, the idea that Venom eats just old anybody and wants to eat anybody are often jokes, and said that he does so because of the control that he has as a symbiote and the shared ownership with the body he inhabits. But in canon comics, Venom does have a skewed but weird moral compass. So, bad person, eat. Good person, rescue. Save the world, yes. Eat bad people. Do some crimes because we like food and money. Okay. That's kind of things. You've seen also Deadpool. Deadpool is the ultimate anti-hero. He is the very definition of anti-hero. Guess what? He kicks ass and gets things done and does not follow rules or guides. He's the swearingest, dirtiest, fun. I see Gretchen Donshredder is here. For those of you, I'm pretty sure most of you don't know, but Gretchen is one of my dearly beloved friends. They're the best. So, yeah. So, anyways, back to Deadpool. The ultimate anti-hero because he will stab people, shoot people, do whatever he has to do, but also really good, good-hearted, does all the wrong things, but for the right reasons, and ultimate goal is to be the hero, even though he does it all the wrong way. So, and often in trouble. That's why whenever he is in the X-Men universe, interacting with the X-Men or anything to do with the X-Men, they all are really super angry with him because he will not stay in that regimented box. He's 10 steps further down than the Wolverine, and the Wolverine is trouble enough. My other favorite, besides Harley Quinn, is Ghostwriter. If you don't know Ghostwriter is probably, I'm going to step out on a limb here and say he's the most powerful of all. And we'll talk about Ghostwriter sometime, but also an anti-hero. Ghostwriter doesn't follow anyone's rules because he's Ghostwriter, and he doesn't have to. But Ghostwriter also judges, and that is what makes his decisions. So, also, Ghostwriter is immortal. So 100% immortal. There is no stripping Ghostwriter. There are several iterations of Ghostwriter because the Ghostwriter passes on, and there's more Ghostwriters throughout history of Ghostwriters. It's a fun one. We'll go through that sometime. So let's see. I saw that there was a comment. Oh, and Rhonda Clark says they went to see one of the Harley Quinn movies but didn't really understand it and couldn't get into it. So, Rhonda, that would depend on which movie it was. If it was Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, yeah, that's a hard one to watch and understand if you haven't already known a large history into the women in that movie. It definitely requires some comic background history to really get the full experience of it. But that was definitely a Harley Quinn movie. If it was Suicide Squad, for especially one, that also requires a little bit of backstory. And we can talk a little bit about that. But Suicide Squad is basically government taking villains and anti-heroes who have been imprisoned with psychiatric disorders or for whatever reason or for horrendous crimes, and basically blackmailing them into doing things. Okay. Yeah, so Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. So now you're right in my wheelhouse. And the reason you didn't get it is because it does require history of knowing the stories of Rita Moreno. She's a cop, and she becomes a hero over time because of the horrendous treatment of women. Birds of Prey is truly, other people will argue and tell you it's not. It is a movie about the empowerment of women. All of the heroes in here, they team up, even though they haven't loved each other in the past. They've had their interactions, and that's why, and that is the Birds of Prey is really, it's a story about how Harley Quinn truly makes her final break from the Joker, which gets addressed in a couple different ways along the Harley Quinn timeline, but 100%. And this is about redemption for Harley Quinn, because somewhere between Birds of Prey and Suicide Squad, even though Suicide Squad came out first, Harley Quinn truly begins to work through her Stockholm Syndrome, segregate herself away from the Joker, becoming her own person, and becoming a powerful force in the DC universe. That's why she's winds up in New York and making a whole new name for herself. So it's kind of like Birds of Prey takes a bunch of history, shoves it all up into the future, and is a lead-in story to future things that happen in the universe. So yeah, I can see why, if you haven't actually had a long history with these stories of these characters, it probably wasn't very good. It was huge about that. And at the end of Birds of Prey, I'm assuming by now we're going to have spoilers because the movie's been out for a few years. At the end, you see that she brings another character with her, and in sort of a mentoring sort of capacity. And that's the long, hard road to redemption. But as Harley gets into Suicide Squad because she needs to do her redemption, she eventually turns the line and gets pretty leadery in Suicide Squad and really starts to come out into her own. Anyways, boy, did I really go off on a tangent there. So, yeah, Birds of Prey was the last of the women's team up. It was kind of a one-off. There are Birds of Prey comics where it goes on for quite a while, but I don't know if they're really going to get into that here. I think that from there they're going to do more of the splintering off, especially as they're working through Suicide Squad. But Birds of Prey kind of is falling in the timeline of the comics where they're hitting Gotham, past Gotham Sirens. Gotham Sirens happened in about 2009, and that little series of the comics was where Harley Quinn teamed up with Poison Ivy and with Catwoman, and they became like really close and tight-knit. But that was one of the times that Harley Quinn had a temporary break with the Joker. And whenever she's apart from the Joker, Harley Quinn like starts to shine, and then she gets pulled back into that abusive cycle. Now, but the problem is somewhere around the end of the Gotham Sirens, what happens is that Harley Quinn goes back to the Joker and then winds up betraying and hurting Ivy and Catwoman. Now, Poison Ivy is her own story and eventually comes around, but Catwoman holds grudges 100%. So Harley Quinn is never really going to be back in Catwoman's good graces, even if Catwoman eventually has to come around to working with her in the future. So, oh, and JV Dub says they should have just named Birds of Prey to be Raptors. Raptor means Birds of Prey, and it might have done better at the box office. Possibly, but I actually really think the problem with Birds of Prey was, one, it was all women heroes, and two, it was really a mind blow to put the toxicity of Harley Quinn and Joker, the love story, that into the highlight as not a good thing and really severing ties with it for good. There's no more going back now. It's done. It's over. And it's canon. So, anyways, I thought I would share with you. I'm going to go back in time since now we went all the way into the future. 1992, first time in appearance in the animated series. It was only meant to be like a couple episodes, but she was really popular. To tell you how much of a temporary thing she was, Paul Dini was one of the creators for Batman the Animated Series, and he was watching soap operas. I know. But if you were around in the early 90s watching TV, or even the early 80s, you know, soap operas were really they were having a popular surge in the United States, and everybody watched soap operas. And especially Days of Our Lives, because Days of Our Lives was wackadoo. I mean, they did like crazy stuff. It was almost comic book in its own right. And in one of the series, the character played by Arlene Sorkin, I'm sorry, I do not know the character's name, because my grandma watched soap operas, but I really didn't get into it. I only know it because this is tied to the comics. Anyways, Arlene Sorkin had like some kind of weird hallucination or fantasy where she was kidnapped by clowns and then became like a clown, and it was all very surreal, and I don't know, it sounds like drugs to me. But Paul Dini had that in his head and started working with Arlene Sorkin and convinced her to voice Harley Quinn for these episodes. And it was only meant to be a couple episodes, but Harley Quinn really took off in popularity really quick. part of it because she was awesome, and part of it because it was that train wreck that you could not look away from, watching her take all of the crap from the Joker, but also being completely badass, but at the same time completely disregarded. And well, just whoa, she was off the rails. So she was really interesting in the cartoon. And it was Arlene Sorkin who coined that phrase about Harley Quinn that you'll hear sometimes, is Harley Quinn really wants to be a good girl, but it's really just not her to be anything other than a bad girl. And it's just like, that is definitely all about Harley right there. That's it in a nutshell. She wants to be good, but really it's just not her. So and Air Fry Auntie tells me that the Arlene Sorkin's character was Calliope. So that makes sense. So, and JV Dub says he remembers Days of Our Lives in the 70s, followed by The Doctors, and then Another World, followed by Somerset. Whoa, man, there was a lot. He says his mom was hooked on soaps before they moved overseas. Now, growing up, we watched a lot of telenovas. So, anyways, that was the start of Harley Quinn. It was actually the TV cartoon. Then, in 1994, that was when Harley Quinn was first brought into the comics. And even then, it wasn't like into a regular comic. It was in a special release comic. It was the 1994 edition of Batman Adventures, and it's called Mad Love. And what it really was it was establishing that Harley Quinn's genius and giving that background that she was Harleen Quinn, a well-renowned psychiatrist who was doing an internship at Arkham Asylum when she met the Joker, and even though she was his doctor, she fell in love with him, which led to her helping him escape, starting the whole cycle and storyline. And it always leads right back to that whole beginning of watching how he treats her. Now, that leads to some questions about the origin story of Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn's origin story doesn't have a set-in-stone canon origin. It's all a little bit loose, and it's told several different ways in several different of the DC Universe timelines. All of it, though, is very similar. And it all leads up to this beginning love story of Arkham Asylum and the Joker. But it makes a lot of sense because for the most part, the origin story of Harley Quinn is that she was this genius, but she had an abusive family growing up and was in that whole barely surviving to get out of the house and to go to school and become a brilliant psychiatrist. And part of the reason she went to Arkham Asylum to intern was to start getting into the heads and understanding how that happened. So it becomes that very interesting how this happened, because then, obviously her relationship with the Joker is so terrible, and so much does she do to become part of the relationship with Joker. She finds her jester costume in a shop and steals it. In one storyline, it's just her own personal mental breakdown during this cycle of abuse that brings her to the Harley Quinn persona. In the other line, which tends to be the more directed one, as part of the problem with the Joker, when she does it better at a couple jobs than the Joker and outperforms him, in a fit of rage, he shoves her into the vat of acid just like he experienced, so that she could feel his pain and suffering, and hence that's why she also is basically a Joker. character. So that's sort of how, that's her origins. It's all it's a little foggy, but let's see. And then JV Dub is saying, remember in the 80s with Luke and Laura craze for ABC's General Hospital? So I don't, but again, I'm sure it was also crazy, and I didn't get the soap opera bug. I did get some telenovas, which the telenovas were really wild too, like, very exaggerated. But let's see. So anyways, let's see. That was 1994, and it all seems to always circle back through these characters like all of them do. The timelines are squishy, and because they do several series, and each series they're similar, but their lives take these different steps that all sort of merge into one general canon story. And so here we are with Harley Quinn. The other piece happens here is after 1994 and 1999 is when this whole story becomes canon in the comic No Man's Land. So that story in the Mad Love becomes DC says, yes, this is it, and this is the fact of the matter. She was a brilliant doctor, and she helps him escape and becomes insane, yada yada yada. And Hunger Heath says the only soap opera he followed was WWF. Yes, we did watch that when we were kids as well. Let's see. Gretchen Dontreader says, oh no, professors called off classes and dorms put big screens in their lobbies and half of OSU campus watched Luke and Laura get married. Whoa. Wow, that's pretty incredible. I didn't realize it was that popular. Man, that's pretty groovy to hear though, although kind of scary because, wow, they canceled classes for a soap opera. That's nuts. So, let's see. So I mentioned that when Harley Quinn, she fights the Penguin and defeats him, which was something that the Joker hadn't been able to accomplish. So he's already mad, and Harley Quinn is having a hard time understanding that, and so she moves forward and says, well, you know what, the Joker had this awesome idea of killing Batman with piranhas, but ultimately scrapped it because piranhas can't smile. So she decided, oh, I'll take the Joker's plan and make it a reality. If Batman is tied up upside down when the piranhas kill him, the piranhas will all look like they're smiling. That takes some special broken thinking to figure that out. But it is what it is, and it is the comics. But so the ever-escaping Batman, the one that Joker can never ever get and is constantly in fear of Batman, even though he portrays that he is not, Harley bags him up and is ready to kill him when Batman taunts her until she says, until she believes Batman that yes, absolutely, she needs to show the Joker what she's doing. But of course, the Joker is furious that she has Batman. And so she winds up having to let Batman go. And after all this, how does the Joker thank you? He tries to kill her again. So, heartbroken, Harley Quinn actually checks herself back into the Arkham Asylum because she has more of a psychological break. Time for another bite. Chomp. I'm probably not going to get too much more detail in. So let me know if there are questions you have about Harley Quinn or what you're thinking about this wild story I'm telling you. Because it is wild. So, yeah, she checks herself back into Arkham Asylum. And when she gets back out, that's when that whole Gotham sirens happens. So, and then she winds up back with the Joker again. Like, woman, he tried to kill you. Like, that was like the 4th time. Maybe don't do that, but she does. And as it turns out, it winds her back in Arkham Asylum. And eventually, because she's in Arkham Asylum, that's how she gets recruited into what's called Task Force X, which is what we're also calling Suicide Squad. And so begins the Suicide Squad line. During the course of that timeline, also, Joker almost does kill Harley Quinn, and Poison Ivy rescues her, puts her back into good health. And that starts another timeline of the Harley Quinn stories. Now, even though Harley Quinn is sort of free, she still comes back and is still called to service for Task Force X and Suicide Squad. And while the blackmail is still sort of there, it's also sort of not there, because she's chaos. And literally, Harley Quinn is so insane, she does not care if they're going to kill her. So she's very much got that I do what I want attitude. So, and of course, the Suicide Squad leads the first Suicide Squad. She is broken up, and that with the Joker, sorta, kind of, it's a mess. And by the time Birds of Prey comes around, 100%, they replay the breakup, and that's what leads into the girl power and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. If you weren't quite catching what happened with that and understanding some of the subtleties to the storyline, it truly is about a woman breaking her cycle of abuse in that story, 100%, and then starting over a whole brand new life. Somewhere in that timeline also, the Batman Arkham Asylum video game comes out, and that's also a piece of the story. Somewhere between that video game, stint in Arkham Asylum, after Gotham Sirens, and during some of the stints of the Task Force X and Suicide Squad piece, Harley Quinn does date someone else who, ironically, or not so ironically, ends up in Arkham Asylum. And when she goes back to break him out, Joker is currently residing in Arkham Asylum. And so this is before Birds of Prey and the final destruction of the Joker, but it's sort of Birds of Prey adjacent. Anyway, she's breaking out this other boyfriend and runs into the Joker, and Joker sort of starts trying to get into her head and trying to convince her that to break him out again as well, and makes all his woo, and she sort of pretends she's going to go for it, and then she puts a gun to his head like she's going to kill him. And there's where your anti-hero comes in. She says, I finally get it. That's why Batman never kills you. It'd be giving you exactly what you want. And she puts her gun away, gets her new boyfriend, and leaves him there. So it's a repeated story here where she's really, truly making that transition of that break. So that is, it's a big part of the whole Harley Quinn persona. Fast forward a little bit, because we're about to end the live. Harley Quinn and her story eventually, as she moves to New York, she gets together with Poison Ivy. They develop a romantic relationship, and it all gets very complicated as the comics go on. A lot of people are really excited for Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, but as it turns out, if you really retrospect right into it, Ivy's not really all that great for Harley Quinn either. On the surface, it seems like it, because there's lots of rescuing and stuff, but let's be honest, she tells Harley Quinn she's stupid, she punches Harley Quinn whenever she feels the need, whenever anything goes wrong, she is mean, she kicks Harley Quinn out of the apartment, then they string her back in. Is it really any better? No. Harley Quinn is still stuck in that cycle, but hopefully they can work through it in a more positive way. And I think that the new Harley Quinn series is really trying hard to work through a lot of that and make it a more positive experience. So, but also, in one of the timelines became the new 52, Harley and Joker are a no They are that is the canon final split. So yeah, it is very dark, Older Pennsylvanian. You're right. It is very dark. Hers is a dark storyline, and that's what I was saying too. Is people think comics and stuff are very lighthearted, but actually, if you start deep diving into them, almost all of the comics are very dark. Sometime, even though I don't like Superman, we'll talk about Superman. His is a horrible story too. But remember, she's got redemption coming up. Redemption. And she's all for it. And now it's 8 o'clock. So unless there's any parting statements, it is time to end the stream. And we do want to end on time because in half an hour we get part of the 12 Days of Christmas live stream from two crazy ketos. And I don't know about you, but I think it'll be a good time to finish putting on my pajamas, take a quick shower, finish off my coffee and cake. So I hope you guys liked my deep dive into some nerdity, liked some of the things I showed you, and now you can make yourself an awesome James Hoffmann Ultimate French Press. And of course, I have to give you the YouTube spiel of don't forget, if you're not subscribed, to hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell icon so that it reminds you when we go live or when we upload videos. And also, feel free to share out the stream so we grow and we have a lively chat. So, I'll talk to you guys probably in about half an hour for most of you. See you soon.